नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भागवते उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवतिर्नैष्टिकी ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतां परमानन्दं माधवम्। Thank you for joining. We'll resume our study of the 7th chapter, Canto 4, verse 9. And quick recap that in the previous chapter, Lord Brahma had visited Lord Shiva along with the Devas and made a strong case for Lord Shiva to forgive Daksha and the Devas. So he goes through this whole process of glorifying Lord Shiva as being magnanimous and comparing the Devas to the materialistic karmakandis who are on a precarious path. And then he makes a case that if Lord Shiva does not forgive them, then what hope they will have. He also makes the case that even though they are materialistic, but at least they're pious. And through the pious activities they perform, other people who are also materialistic get inspired to perform pious activities. So for these reasons, he entreats Lord Shiva to punish them. And he says that you don't have to punish them. They will get punished by the law of karma. So in this verse, we see that Lord Shiva begins by accepting and endorsing the premise of Lord Brahma. And he says that I did not punish them out of anger. I punished them because it is for their welfare. And he speaks of the Devas like as their children. So they're children. So children can be naughty. They can do things that are not in their best interest. So concerned parent will do whatever is needed to control them and also to make sure that they're able to distinguish between right and wrong. So so after this, Brahma, based on the request of Brahma, Lord Shiva, he restores partially that which was taken. Daksha's head was taken and he got the head of a goat. Bhrigu Muni's mustache was taken and he got the mustache of a goat whose head Daksha got. Bhaga's eyes had been plucked out and he was given the benediction that he could see through the eyes of Mitra. Pusha's teeth had been knocked and he was given this allowance that he could chew through the teeth of his disciples or Daksha, or he could eat Sattu. Then the Devas who had not sided with Daksha, they were simply restored to their original form. And those who had actually sided with Daksha, raising their arms and condemning Lord Shiva, so Lord Shiva said that they would work through the arms of the Ashwini Kumars and the hands of. The same mood is seen, that of compassion, but also wanting to correct. So all the personalities were very, very happy. Happy may not be the right word. I think the word is used is satisfied. They were satisfied in their heart upon hearing the words of Lord Shiva, understanding that the punishment that they received is much less than what they deserved, and whatever they received was for their benefits. And then Raghu Muni invites Lord Shiva to the Yagyasthal. Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma go to the place for the performance of Yagya. And then at this point, everything is done as per the direction of Lord Shiva. Daksha's body is joined to his head and he comes alive. So from the 9th verse, we will see what Daksha does once he regains consciousness. So 479. Sandhyamane shirasi Daksha Rudra Vivikshitaha. Sorry. Sadyasuptayvotasthav Dadrashe Chargato Mridam. When the animal's head was fixed on the body of King Daksha, Daksha was immediately brought to consciousness. And as he awakened from sleep, the king saw Lord Shiva standing before him. So in 3 verses, 9, 10, and 11, we will see what does the newly revived Daksha think about his situation. Prabhupada in the purport again writes to demonstrate that consciousness is not predicated on the gross body. Else Daksha, with a different brain of a goat, would have acted differently. And he definitely would have forgotten everything. The brain was actually recording memories. His previous head, if you remember, when it was cut by Veerbhadra, he actually put it into the fire and burned it. But Prabhupada says because not only did he retain his own personality, he also retained memory. And also the example of Jat Bharat. You see Jat Bharat, he not only remembers his past life, he remembers past 2 lives. He remembers his life as a deer, he remembers his life as Bharat Maharaj, even though he went through 2 different bodies. So in this verse, we see the position of Lord Shiva as the actual well-wisher of his devotees. And in that role, he wants them to engage in bhakti. Right? So we see the example of the prachetas. Right? Lord Shiva comes and he gives them the Rudra Gita, which is the stotra to satisfy Lord Vishnu. We see the example of the Brahman and Sanatana Goswami. I spoke about it, where the Brahman was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva said, you go to Sanatana Goswami. And ostensibly he said, you go to ask for wealth. But Lord Shiva knew that the association with the Vaishnava can never go waste. And sure enough, the Brahman, he ends up being a devotee. Okay, next verse, 10. Tada Vrisha Dvaja Dvesha Kalilatma Prajapati Shiva Valakva Dabhava Sharadrada Ivamalaha. At that time, when Daksha saw Lord Shiva, who rides upon a bull, his heart, which was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, was immediately cleansed. Just as the water in a lake is cleansed by autumn rains. So Prabhupada expands on the analogy a little bit, and he says that in the rainy season, the reservoirs of water become dirty and muddy. But when the autumn rain comes, then the water becomes clear and transparent. So although Daksha's heart was impure because of his offenses against Lord Shiva, now seeing Lord Shiva, he offered respect. Also, he must have read Prabhupada's illustrated book, Autumn in Vrindavan, which essentially a picturization of Canto 10, Chapter 20, where Prabhupada had sanctioned this book to be sent to Japan for representation of artistic representation of something that was spiritual. So he takes the Autumn in Vrindavan and sends that book. It's a beautiful paintings, and very very nice reading for children. Actually, for adults also, they can understand the deeper meaning. But children love the pictures, etc. Japanese style painting. Yeah. So one may also question over here that what is it that had happened to Daksha for him to become favorable to Lord Shiva? He was not a part of the chastisement of Brahma. He was not a part of the group because he was dead at that time. He was not a part of the group that had gone to beg mercy from Lord Shiva. He did not hear the conversation with Lord Shiva. And yet we see that as soon as he regained consciousness, his consciousness was purified. So his affection for Lord Shiva was actually a symptom of his purified consciousness. And saying it the other way, that his offending Lord Shiva was a symptom of his contaminated consciousness. Now, it's not necessary that death will purify consciousness. In fact, for most people, death will carry on the same consciousness. But Daksh is in a different situation. So he is born with Purvasmriti. He's not forgotten anything. He remembers that he has slandered Lord Shiva. He remembers he has been killed. And now he realizes he has been given back life by Lord Shiva. So by thinking favorably of a devotee, his consciousness became purified. Earlier on, by slandering a devotee, his consciousness was contaminated. So in a way, this is the process of bhakti, how it feeds upon each other. That when he regained consciousness, he developed gratitude for Lord Shiva, even if it was for just giving him back his life. But that gratitude, it purified his consciousness. And because of the purity of the consciousness, he could now understand Lord Shiva's position even better. And because of that, he developed more respect, more love, more gratitude for Lord Shiva. And that further purified his consciousness. Because in Daksha's case, there was no other external impetus. It was only his realization of the mercy of Lord Shiva. And actually, Srila Prabhupada comments on this form of bhakti, because Daksha did not execute explicit devotional service. He executes implicit devotional service. Only thing that changed in his course is disposition. But that itself is very powerful. Okay. Next verse, 11. Bhavstavaya krittadhi na shaknod Othankaya dabaskalaya samarpatam sutam smaran. Daksha wanted to offer praise to Lord Shiva. But as he remembered the ill-fated death of his daughter Sati, his eyes filled with tears, and in bereavement, his voice choked up, and he could not say anything. So these symptoms that Daksha is displaying are that of a person with purified consciousness. So one of the symptoms of a person with purified consciousness is that he becomes soft-hearted. And converse is that a contaminated consciousness makes a person hard-hearted. Previously, right in front of Daksha, Sati had given up her life, but it did not make any difference to him. Now, just the thought of it is causing him to choke. So at one place he is otankhayat. Otankhayat means that he is very eager, bhavastavaya, very eager to offer praise to Lord Shiva, understanding his position as a Vaishnava, understanding his mercy upon him. So, otankhayat bhavastavya. But then, same time, smaran, samapirtam smutam. So, smaran means that he is remembering samapirtam sutam, the death of his daughter. So, he is torn between these two emotions and pashpakalaya, that he becomes overwhelmed with grief and is not able to say anything. Verse 12. Krichrad samstabaya chamanaha prema viha vilataha sudihi shashamsa trivyalikena bhavinesham prajapatihi. At this time, King Daksha, afflicted with love and affection, was very much awakened to his real senses. With great endeavor, he pacified his mind, checked his feelings, and with pure consciousness began to offer praise to Lord Shiva. So all these verses, while they're talking about the awakening of Daksha, they're also talking about awakening of bhakti. So what happens when bhakti awakens in a condition? Jiva. The consciousness becomes pure. The mind becomes pacified. One becomes afflicted. So afflicted is used in a good way over here. One gets afflicted by love and affection. And one is awakened to the real senses. Seva mukhehi jivadi. Not the conditioned senses, but real senses. And what is one's desire? To offer praise to Vaishnavas. These are all symptoms that Daksha is displaying when his consciousness has become purified. And these are all symptoms that devotees also begin to display as bhakti blossoms more and more in their heart. Okay, let's see the prayers of Daksha. Verse 13. Daksha vacha bhuyan anugraha aho bhavata krutumi dandastvaya mai brituyadapi pralabdha na brahma bandashu chayam bhagavan avakya tubhyam harescha kuta eva drittavrateshu. King Daksha said, "My dear Lord Shiva, I have committed a great offense against you, but you are so kind that instead of withdrawing your mercy, you have done me a great favor by punishing me. You and Lord Vishnu never neglect even useless, unqualified Brahmins. Why then should you neglect me, who am engaged in performing sacrifices?" So, in 3 verses, 13, 14, 15, we see the prayers by Daksha to Lord Shiva. So, Daksha Vacha, Daksha says, Bhuyan anugraho bhavata kritom. That being merciful on me and not being indifferent to me. So, this is an important point. That the worst kind of reaction you can have towards somebody is indifference. So we are indifferent to strangers, and we are indifferent to our greatest enemies because we don't really care whether something good happens, whether something bad happens. It's complete indifference. So Daksha is saying, I'm so happy that you were not indifferent to me. And then he says, Bhrato yadapi pralabdha, that even though I offended you, so I gave you cause, but you did not react to it. Dandastvaya maya bhrato yad. You have punished me and taught me. So this is the real value of punishment given by well-wishers. And Vam Bhagwan Avidya Tubham Hareschana. So you and Vishnu do not neglect Brahmabandeshu, Kar Brahmanas. So Kuta Eva Dhrata Bhrateshu. What to speak of those with firm views? So Daksha is laying stake to that position. He's at least he is not considering himself to be a Brahmabandushu, but he's saying I'm Kuta Eva Dhrata Bhrateshu. That I'm a Brahman who is firm in my views, and which is factual. That Daksha as a Prajapati was a great performer of sacrifice. That's why when he would perform yagya, everyone in the universe, including Brahma, would come. So he's saying, I'm Kuta Eva Dhrata Bhrateshu. So you, Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, right? So he's glorifying Lord Shiva in relationship to Lord Vishnu. So at one point, he's glorifying the punishment given by Lord Shiva because he considers it as a sign of affection. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Lord Shiva considered Daksha to be like family, and out of affection from him, corrected him by giving him just punishment. When one considers another an enemy, they tend to neglect them. Daksha is appreciating that Shiva did not simply neglect him, but let him suffer due to his transgressions. Now, even this punishment, Daksha is saying that there was just cause for it. I should have been punished more. So the mercy is not only that Lord Shiva punished him, but the mercy is also that the punishment was very less compared to the offense. And that's where he's glorifying Lord Shiva. That you and Lord Vishnu are so merciful that even to Brahma Bandhus, you show compassion. In the 5th canto, there is a verse that says that this is the description of hellish planners. It says that those who inflict corporal punishment upon a Brahman, they are taken by Yamadutas to a hell that is known as Shukar Mukha. And Srila Prabhupada gives the instance of Arjun not killing Ashwathama. Even though Ashwathama, if he had been a Kshatriya, he deserved to be killed. But because he was, and in that case, Krishna says he's the Brahmabandeshu, but still Arjun declines to kill. So even in such cases, if a Brahman is forgiven, then more mercy would undoubtedly be offered to one who is performing yagyas for the benefit of the universe. So he's saying, I spoke harshly to you out of anger and envy, so I cannot be called a Brahman, even though I am the son of Lord Brahma. But nevertheless, you are merciful. Nevertheless, I am engaged in activities for the welfare of the of the mankind. So thank you for that. Now, within this thank you is also a request. The request is, kindly let me complete the sacrifice. This is exactly the same point that Lord Brahma also made in the previous chapter in verses 48 and 49. So we know that when the universe was created, Brahma gave various duties to his different sons. Right? So the four Kumaras, they were given the path of Gyan. Narad was given the path of Bhakti. And Daksha was given the path of Karmakant. So in a way, he was the preceptor of the path of Karmakant. And by his execution of sacrifices, other Karmakant Brahmins would also take inspiration. And in this way, piety will be maintained in the universe. So Prabhupada says that although he was fallen, his vow was to execute the sacrifice as it is the duty of Brahmanas. And thus he began his prayers to Lord Shiva. Okay, verse 14. Vidya tapo vrita dharan mukta sma vipran brahmatma tattvam avitum paramam tvamasra tad brahmanam param sarva vipat supasi pala pashoniva vibho provrita danda. My dear great and powerful Lord Shiva, you were created first from the mouth of Lord Brahma in order to protect the Brahmanas in pursuing education, austerity, vows, and self-realization. As protector of the Brahmanas, you always protect the regulative principles they follow. Just as a cowherd boy keeps a stick in hand to give protection to the cows. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Daksha is saying that slightly different translation from Srila Prabhupada's, and then we'll see that Prabhupada actually translates, reconciles the translation. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Daksha is saying that you, Lord Shiva, becoming Brahma, first created Brahmanas engaged in Vidya Tapo Vrita Dharan. So Vidya, knowledge, Tapo, austerities, Vrita is vows, and Dharan is, Dharan is situated in it. So Vidya Vrita, Vidya Tapo Vrita Tap Dharan, from your mouth, Muktasma Vipran, to protect the Vedas and spiritual knowledge. So therefore, Lord Shiva, you protect the Brahmanas from all dangers, just as a cowherd protects the cows by holding a stick. So the Brahmanas are described as being born from the mouth of the Lord, indicating that they eat on behalf of the Lord. So it is still in India, it is still accepted that when there is an auspicious occasion, then Brahmanas should be fed because the Lord eats through the mouth of the Brahmanas. And the second thing is they preach on behalf of the Lord. So the mouth of the Lord, the Vedas come and the Brahmanas spread the Vedas. So Daksha states that Lord Shiva created the Brahmins to protect the Vedas and the knowledge of the South. Then with further humility, he says that we the Brahmins are like animals. Now, why does he say that we are like animals? Because at one point, the Brahmanas are the mouth of the Lord. And then he's saying we are like animals. The point that he's making is that just like animals do not know what is really good for them, we, the Brahmins, engage in karma-kanda activities. So we do not know that bhakti to Lord Vishnu is best. So we are inclined to these fruitive activities for material gain. But then Lord Shiva is so kind that with a stick he keeps us under control. So when a cowherd person has a stick in the hand, then even though the stick is a form of punishment, but it is actually to protect the animals. That the cows don't go astray, they get lost, or they may fall down a ravine or a creek. So somebody seeing superficially might see the cowherd person waving the stick or maybe even hitting the animals. But actually, it is for the benefit of them. So similarly, Daksha is glorifying the punishment of Lord Shiva, that it's just token. It is really to prevent us from straying into this dangerous terrain of karma. So as I mentioned, that Prabhupada interprets this verse as saying that, Daksha is saying that to Lord Shiva, that you were created first from the mouth of Lord Brahma in order to protect the Brahmanas. So this is alluding to the fact that Lord Shiva appears from the forehead of Brahma. Vishwanath Chakravarti interprets this as saying that you, Lord Shiva, first created Brahmanas from your own mouth. And in the purport, Prabhupada reconciles the difference by saying that actually the Brahmanas are created from the mouth of Lord Vishnu. But because Lord Shiva is non-different from Lord Vishnu, it is correct to say that the Brahmanas are appearing from the mouth of Lord Shiva. Vishwanath Chakravarti also states that the Brahmanas are born from the mouth of Brahma. And since Lord Shiva is the creator of Brahma, it can be considered that the Brahmanas are created from his mouth. Further in the purport, Prabhupada gives 4 meanings for Pashupati. So Pashupati is broken up into Pashu and Pati. Pashu can mean animal. Pashu can also mean the living entity, Jiva. Pati can be considered as a protector, and Pati can also be considered as the punisher. So by the combination of these 2 words, 4 different meanings are obtained. So one is that Lord Shiva, he protects the advanced jivas. So this is Pati as a protector and Pashu as the jivas. So Prabhupada says that Lord Shiva is called Pashupati because he protects the living entities in their developed consciousness, so that they may follow the Vedic system of Varna and Ashram. Then the second meaning is if you consider Pashu to be fallen, Lord Shiva is he who protects the fallen by giving them shelter. So Pati is shelter and Pashu is fallen. So Prabhupada says Lord Shiva is always interested in protecting the animals and the animalistic living entities who are not very advanced in the spiritual sense. Then third is that he provides protection, Pati, against Pashu. So against those who are miscreants, Pashu, Lord Shiva is the Pati for the devotees. So he protects the Brahmanas from the attacks of non-Brahmanas, or he protects the cultured person from the uncultured persons. The fourth is that one considers those who are following Karma Kand to be Pashus. And Lord Shiva as the Pati in this case is the destroyer, he destroys the Karma Kandis. Prabhupada says persons who are simply attached to the ritualistic portion of the Vedas and do not understand the situation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are not any more advanced than animals. Lord Shiva's aim in destroying the Daksha Yagya was to punish Daksha, because by neglecting him here points to Lord Shiva, Daksha was committing a great offense. So Daksha was thinking that because I'm expert in Karma Kand, I do not need bhakti. So Lord Shiva, he destroys the Karma Kandis or the Karma Kandi conception. In terms of the stick and the coward boy, Prabhupada says that Lord Shiva's punishment was just like a coward boy who keeps a stick to frighten the animals. It is commonly said that to give protection to animals, a stick is needed because animals cannot reason and argue. Their reasoning and argument is argumentum ad baculum. So argumentum ad baculum is literally means appeal to the stick. And it's a form of logic where, at least in the material sense, it is considered to be a fallacy, where a person takes a stick and says that you either agree with me or I'll beat you. So it's a fallacy because the person is using the logic of the stick, not the logic of the argument. The person is logically saying that, or the person's logic is that my stick is here. Regardless of what I'm saying, you believe me. Otherwise, we'll beat you. So it's considered as fallacy. In a spiritual sense, this is glorified, because the connotation of the stick is not to beat, but to protect. So the person essentially is saying that, please believe in what I'm saying, for I'm here to protect you. So that's why Prabhupada quotes this. Okay, we'll do one more verse. After that, we'll pause for discussion. Yosav maya vidit tattva drisha sabhayam kshipto durki vishikhe vigananyatanma arvat patantam arahatta nindayapa Drishtadaryasa Bhagavan Sukritena Tushyat. I did not know your full glories. For this reason, I threw arrows of sharp words at you in the open assembly, although you did not take them into account. I was going down to hell because of my disobedience to you, who are the most respectable personality. But you took compassion upon me and saved me by avoiding punishment. I request that you be pleased by your own mercy, since I cannot satisfy you by my words. So Daksha is continuing on the same theme, that the punishment that Lord Shiva has given upon him is actually a symptom of his mercy. So his own behavior was deplorable because he had insulted Lord Shiva with harsh words. But Viganyaya, he said, you did not take my faults seriously. So why did Lord Shiva not take the faults seriously? Daksha says, avidita tattva. Because you understood that I am ignorant. Tattva means the truth. Avidita means did not know. So you understood that I was ignorant. I was speaking out of ignorance. So you did not take my insults seriously. So he said, whatever the reason, ultimately it is because of compassion to me that you punish me. because the alternative was patantam, right? Because Lord Shiva may say that you keep saying I've given mercy. What is the mercy? Mercy is that you have stopped me from going down to hell. That is the greatest mercy that you have bestowed upon me. Now, with further humility, Daksha says that there is nothing further I can say to satisfy you. Because he is saying that my offenses are too great. My faults are too prominent. So I cannot even adequately propitiate you with words or action. So he's saying that it's not that now I have become a pure devotee. It's not that my consciousness is now completely purified. He says that my offenses were too great and I'm still unqualified. So I am not able to glorify you appropriately. So he requests Lord Shiva, says, Bhagwan Swakritena Tushyat, that please be satisfied by your own mercy. So anything that Daksha says or any actions that Daksha does is not going to qualify him for the mercy of Lord Shiva. So he's saying that I do not have any qualifications to receive your mercy. Be satisfied with your mercy means that it's just your nature to be merciful, even on those who are not qualified. So we see extreme humility in Daksha, the way that he's glorifying Lord Shiva. He's glorifying the punishment. He is glorifying the continuing mercy. And then with great humility, he is saying that I could never understand your position completely. I still cannot. So I cannot glorify you appropriately. So anything that you do to me is because it's your nature to be merciful. It's not because I am qualified to receive your mercy. In the 8th canto, on this form of punishment, Bali Maharaj actually says that a father, mother, brother, or friend may sometimes punish one as a well-wisher, though they will never punish their subordinate. So this is in response to Vamandev punishing him. So he says that your punishment to me is like that of a father, mother, brother, or friend. So he says, but because you're the most worshipable Lord, I regard the punishment you have given me as most exalted, because it's the symptom of love. So Srila Prabhupada also notes that this mood of Daksha should be the meditation of practicing devotees. So Prabhupada says that he accepts the miserable condition to be the grace of the Lord. He thinks, I would have been punished or put into a more dangerous condition of life due to my past misdeeds. But the Lord has protected me. Thus, I have received only a little punishment as a token execution of the law of karma. So thinking of his grace in that way, a devotee always surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead more and more seriously and is not disturbed by so-called punishment. So this is a very interesting mood that Srila Prabhupada presents. So as I mentioned earlier, this is essentially a paraphrase of the verse spoken by Brahma to Krishna in 10th canto, 14th chapter, the famous verse Tattenukampam Susmikshamana, where he says that one who waits for the Lord to bestow his mercy while patiently suffering the reactions of the past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, word, and body is eligible for liberation, for it is his rightful claim. So typically, when somebody speaks about bhakti, they speak about the 9 processes of bhakti given by Prahlad Maharaj, right? The 7th canto, where he says, Shravana Kirtana Vishnu Sparanam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandanam, Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedam. So these are the 9 processes which are actively performed. Actually, the first 3, Shravana Kirtan, Vishnu Sparanam, they are performed after first initiation. Then Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandanam, this is deity worship. This is performed after Brahman initiation. And Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedam, this is after sannyas, where one is situated in the eternal rasa of Dasyam. These are the rasas, Dasyam, servitude, Sakyam, friendship. Atmanivedam in this context translates to conjugal, even though Bali Maharaj is used to represent it, but in this context it stands when one has surrendered everything to the Lord. And so regardless of the situation, one executes devotional service. But here there is no mention of the execution of the process of bhakti. In the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada, he says that he comments on this verse, Tatyanukampam. He says that this verse talks about just having the right disposition. The person does nothing. Like he does not execute any of the angas of bhakti, but simply has the right disposition. That in itself is so powerful that Lord Brahma asserts that it gives the person the right to the spiritual world. Not just liberation, but entry into the spiritual world. So the point that is being made here is that consciousness is very important. Now, of course, when a person is properly situated in consciousness, activities will follow. But consciousness is being glorified over here. That when a person has this consciousness that anything that is going bad for me is a token reaction of the bad things that I did, the bad things that I deserve. Krishna is giving me a token reaction. Anything that is good happening to me is the mercy of Krishna. But regardless of good and bad things, when the person is simply waiting for the mercy of Krishna, person doesn't think that I'm chanting now, so why is this bad thing happening to me? Or this good thing is happening to me, so now I'm properly situated and everything is taken care of. In either cases, the person is simply patiently waiting for the mercy of Krishna. And that attitude will make him so extensive commentaries are on this verse. So when it says rightful claim, Prabhupada mentions that just like a child has a rightful claim to the property of the father, he does not have to do anything. He does not have to work. The father is a millionaire. The child has claim to the father's property. He does not have to work hard to get the $1 million. Just by the fact that he's acknowledging his relationship as the child to the father, that gives him the claim. So simply by devotees acknowledging that Krishna's mercy is there for them, that gives them the right to inherit the spiritual world. Okay, so we'll pause here, see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Just a comment, the augmentum ad baculatum is unless there is a rod. The law of karma also work like that, no? It's an invisible rod.
Yeah, I mean, if you accept the law of karma, then it is the augmentum debactum that karma says that you accept my logic or else you will be punished. And if the person accepts it, then everything is copacetic after that.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more comments. We can move to the next verse, verse 16. Maitrivacha Shamapayevam Samidvamsam Brahmana Chanumantritaha Dharma Santanayamasa Sopadaya Yatrikadvi. The great sage Maitreya said, thus being pardoned by Lord Shiva, King Daksha, with the permission of Lord Brahma, again began the performance of the yajna, along with the great learned sages, the priests, and others. So in 10 verses, from 16 to 25, we will see that Daksha, he resumes the performance of the sacrifice and the arrival of Lord Vishnu himself. So in these two verses, we see how the Purudosh oblations are offered. So even though it's not explicitly stated, but it's understood that Lord Shiva accepted the prayers of Daksha. The fact that he allowed him to come alive again, that itself is a sign that he pardoned him. But the prayers, they were received and accepted by Lord Shiva, and he's been given the permission to continue with the yajna. So now he takes permission from Lord Brahma, and along with the other sages and the priests, he can continue with the yajna. So it is said that the yajna was performed with Upadhyaya, Ritvik, Adhubi. So 3 kinds of people. So Adhyaya is those who teach. So Upadhyaya is basically teachers. Then Ritvik is the priests who perform sacrifices, and Adhubi are others who are either assisting them, who are learning themselves, or belong to another category. So with these 3, Daksha, he resumes the performance of the yajna. Vaishnavam yajna santatyai Trikapalam Dvijotamaha Purodasham Nirvapan Vir Samsaga Shuddhaye. Thereafter, in order to resume the activities of the sacrifice, the Brahmanas first arranged to purify the sacrificial arena of the contamination caused by the touch of Veerbhadra and the other ghostly followers of Lord Shiva. Then they arranged to offer into sacrifice the oblation known as Purodasha. So for the performance of the sacrifice, both external as well as internal purity is needed. Right? Even when we do deity worship, we first purify ourselves externally by taking a bath and wearing clean clothes. And then we purify ourselves internally by performing Achman, meditating Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashanti Surya, chanting mantras, Om Pavitra Pavitra Va. So this way, both external and internal purity is needed when performing yagyas. So here in 3 vessels, they offered what is called the Trikapal Purudosha. And this they offered to sanctify the area that had been contaminated. So if you remember, when Veerbhadra and his followers had come, they had broken different pots, they had passed urine, they had killed, they had mutilated people. So that's contaminated the arena. So the Trikapal Purudosh is being offered in order to purify the arena. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that to offer anything in an unclean state is called a seva aparadha. Right? Seva aparadha is essentially what we consider as offenses to deity worship, also applies to performing a yajna in an unclean state. So in the Nectar of Devotion, there are 32 kinds of seva aparadha. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur in Shikshamrita, he divides these into 5 categories, which is uncleanliness, lack of determination, lack of respect, not as per capability, and performed with pride. So this is in the area of uncleanliness. When the person performing is not clean, or the area is not clean, or the upchars are not clean. Lack of determination basically means that the person performs it with half a mind. That, a person is not really convinced that this is the way to go. Disrespect is explicit, that the person performs disrespecting the deities or the devotees. Not as per capability is that the person is performing a yajna, so he's a multi-millionaire, but he's offering $5. Right? So that's considered to be a seva aparadha. Krishna, so it said that Krishna does not only see what you offer, he also sees what you hold back. And then 5th is with pride, when a person performs yajna to show off that this is what I'm capable of. So he has a very opulent yajna. He calls a lot of qualified brahmanas, but essentially his aim is to show how rich he is or how perfect it is. Prabhupada says that whenever any ritualistic ceremony is begun, the holy name of the Lord Vishnu is first chanted in order to purify the situation. Whether one is in a pure or impure condition, internally or externally, if one chants or even remembers the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes immediately purified. And this is Prabhupada paraphrasing the translation of the verse Om Apavitra Pavitrova Sarvastagato Piva Yaha Smareta Pundirikaksham Sa Vaya Vayanta Suchi Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu. So further Prabhupada says that he's talking about the improper performance of yajna. He says that they are not even very hygienic. They do not take baths regularly. They wear long hair and they smoke ganja. Persons of such irregular habits are counted amongst ghosts. Since they were present in the sacrificial arena, the atmosphere became polluted and it had to be sanctified by the Trikapal oblations, which indicates the invocation of Vishnu's favor. So what does Prabhupada mean by when he says that such persons are amongst the ghosts? So essentially what it means is that they are representing a mentality which is similar to those of the ghosts. For instance, in the pastimes of Krishna, Putna is a person who is said to represent a false guru. Kamsa is a person but he also represents the idea of confining Krishna. So similarly, ghosts represent personalities who do not have gross bodies. So, for instance, Putna is a person, but is also a mentality. Kamsa is a person, but also a mentality. So, the mentality of having unclean body and unclean thoughts, Prabhupada says, is ghostly mentality. Because the ghosts, they represent a person or persons, but they also represent a concept. Just like Putna represents false guru, ghost represents unclean body and thoughts. So that's why Prabhupada says that they're among the ghosts, because they have a mentality like that of, or that is represented by the ghosts. Okay, verse 18. Advaryo nataha vishaha yajmano vishampate diya vishuddhaya dhadyao tata pradurabudharihi. The great saint Maitreya said to Vidur, "My dear Vidur, as soon as King Daksha offered the clarified butter with Yajurveda mantras in sanctified meditation, Lord Vishnu appeared there in his original form as Narayan." So, Atahavisha. Atahavisha is the oblations of the Advaryu. So, Advaryu is one of the four priests that represents the Yajurveda. And Daksha is known as the Yajmana. So, Yajmana is the person who is the benefactor of the yajna, who has basically sanctioned the yajna. So when Daksha as the Yajmana, Diya, when he concentrated, Lord Vishnu appeared immediately. And here it is said that he appeared there in his original form as Narayan. Now it does not mean that the original form of the personality of Godhead is Narayan, but we know that the Vishnu avatars who are present in the material world, they are expansions of Lord Narayan. So their original form, Lord Narayan. So Prabhupada says that Lord Vishnu is all-pervading. Any devotee who in sanctified condition follows the regulative principle, chants the required mantras in service, and in a devotional mood can see Vishnu. It is said in Brahma Samhita that a devotee whose eyes are anointed with the ointment of love of Godhead can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead always within his heart. This is the words Premanjana Churuti Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hideshu Vilokayanti Yamashama Sundaram Achintaya Gunaswarupam. Prabhupada said Lord Sham Sundar is so kind to his devotee. So Prabhupada gives here four things that a devotee, if he practices sincerely, he can see Lord Vishnu. First he says sanctified meditation. Second is following the regulative principles. Third is chanting of the bona fide mantra. And fourth is in a mood of devotional service. Okay, verse 19. Tada swapravyate shama dyotyantya disha mushnam steja upanitam takshena stotravajina. Lord Narayan was seated on the shoulders of Stotra or Garud, who had big wings. As soon as the Lord appeared, all directions were illuminated, diminishing the luster of Brahma and the others, present. So when Lord Vishnu appeared, Mushanam. Mushanam means diminishing Teja, the effulgence of Tesham. So Tesham is of the Devas who were present. Swaprabhaya, by his own effulgence. Dyotyantya, which shone brightly Disha Dasha. So in the 10 directions. And he appeared Upanita Tarakshena. Taraksh is another name of Garud. So he appeared Upanita, situated on Garud. Stotra Vajina. So the wings of Garud are said to be the Brihad Ratnakar verses. So we see that Lord Vishnu, when he appeared, the effulgence of Brahma, Shiva, what to speak of Daksha and the others, was diminished. So earlier, if you remember in the second chapter, it was mentioned that when Daksha had entered the assembly, his bodily effulgence diminished that of the others. Now, in the presence of Lord Narayan, his own bodily effulgence and that of Brahma and others are completely diminished. So usually, the Lord appears at the conclusion of the yajna. However, here he appears as soon as the sacrifice is started. So to some extent, this is explained in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where it is said that in Brahmaloka, when Lord Brahma or Indra perform sacrifices, the Lord personally appears to accept them. So in Brahmaloka, Brahma, he constantly is performing sacrifices because he wants the Lord to reside there permanently. So as soon as Lord Brahma offers an oblation, then Lord Vishnu comes and accepts the oblation. So similarly, when the humans, when they are advanced and they perform yajnas, then the devas personally come to offer oblations. Right? We see that when the Rajasuya yajna was performed, right? When everything was so perfect that as soon as the oblations were offered, the devas appeared to accept the oblations. So this is a testimony to the purity and the advanced consciousness of the performance of yajna. So similarly over here, with the purified consciousness of Daksha, with the presence of Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Bhrigu, Indra, and the other Brahma Rishis, one can understand the sacrifice was of the highest order of purity and potency. However, the appearance of the Lord does not imply that everyone assembled there was a pure devotee. As we will see in the prayers that are submitted later on, they have mixed consciousness and they're aware of their shortcomings. So essentially, the appearance of the Lord is in reciprocation to the process of yajna. And the Acharyas also say that the appearance of the Lord is not always a sign of his mercy. It is also a sign of his acknowledgement of the process. So it's like this, that somebody wants to go and meet the president, and the person submits a requisition form or some form, I want to meet, and then that form goes through approval, and then they say that, okay, do you have a valid reason? Do you meet these requirements? The person proves that he meets the requirements. It goes through the different hierarchy. And then finally, because it's the duty of the president to meet the citizens, the president sets an appointment, comes and meets. Now, the other situation is that there is a person to whom the president is very favorably inclined. He comes, the president does not bother that, have you filled this form in triplicate? Have you done this? He simply comes and meets him. So when Krishna appears before his devotee, it is in the latter situation. But when he appears in the yajna, he's simply acknowledging that this process has been followed correctly. So as we will see in the statements by Lord Vishnu, he's not actually very pleased but he still appears. He still appears because he's acknowledging the validity of the yajna. So, and it's no mystery. Why is the Lord not pleased? Because Lord Shiva has forgiven Daksha, but not Krishna. So we see that mood. For instance, when Daksha is born again, then he chants the famous Hamsaguya prayers, right? And when he chants the prayers, then Lord Vishnu appears. And then what does Daksha say? He says, I want to produce progeny. And Lord Vishnu says, so be it. Now, that interaction is an official interaction, because the acharyas say that if Lord Vishnu was really happy with Daksha, he would not give him what he wants, but what he needs. Because when Daksha started producing progeny, his consciousness again became contaminated. And Lord Vishnu was aware of that. But Daksha said, give me this. And Lord Vishnu said, okay, so be it. When Dhruv Maharaj was praying for wealth, then Lord Vishnu, he said, not only wealth, but you get my bhakti. That is a sign of affection of the Lord. And that is the impact of Vaishnava Prarthana. That even though the person that he offended had forgiven Daksha, even though Daksha, he went through this cycle of self-recrimination and clear intent of wanting to move on, still contamination was there. And the symptom of the contamination is that he does not get the full mercy of the Lord. So in the next two verses, we see a description of Lord Vishnu. Sham Hiranyarasano Arkakirita Justo Nilaka Brahmar Mandita Kundalasya Sankabja Chakra Sharachapagada Sicharma Vyagre Hiranmay Pujeriva Karnikara. His complexion was blackish. His garments yellow like gold, and his helmet as dazzling as the sun. His hair was bluish, the color of black peas, and his face was decorated with earrings. His 8 hands held a conchal, wheel, club, lotus flower, arrow, bow, shield, and sword. And they were decorated with golden ornaments, such as bangles and bracelets. His whole body resembled a blossoming tree, beautifully decorated with various kinds of flowers. So Prabhupada says that the face of Lord Vishnu is, as described in this verse, appears like a lotus flower with bees humming all over it. All the ornaments on the body of Lord Vishnu resemble molten gold of the reddish color of the morning sunrise. The Lord appears just as the morning sun rises to protect the whole universal creation. His arms display various weapons, and his 8 hands are compared to the 8 petals of a lotus flower. So make a note of the fact that the Lord has appeared with 8 hands. This will be further commented upon in later verses. So Prabhupada also said, generally the 4 hands of Vishnu, there is a wheel, club, conchal, and lotus flower. These 4 symbols are seen as the 4 hands of Lord Vishnu in different arrangements. The club and the wheel are Lord's symbols for punishment, for the demons and miscreants, and the lotus flower and conchal are used to bless the devotees. There are always 2 classes of men, the devotees and the demons. Prabhupada later says, in the material world, almost everyone is of the demoniac nature. But there are also devotees who appear to be in the material world, although they are always situated in the spiritual world. A devotee's position is always transcendental and is always protected by Lord Vishnu. Next verse. Vakshasya adhishrita vadurvan malyuda hasabalo kalaya ramayam savishvam Bharsva Brahman Vyajan Chamara Rajahamsa Sveta Tapatra Shashinopari Rajyamanaha. Lord Vishnu looked extraordinarily beautiful because the goddess of fortune and a garland were situated on his chest. His face was beautifully decorated with a smiling attitude, which can captivate the entire world, especially the devotees. Fans of white hair appeared on both sides of the Lord like white swans, and the white canopy overhead looked like the moon. So, Prabhupada says that the smiling face of Lord Vishnu is pleasing to the whole world. Not only devotees, but even non-devotees are attracted by such a smile. This verse nicely describes how the sun, moon, 8-petal lotus flower, and humming black bees were represented by the fans of hair, the overhead canopy, the moving earrings on both the sides of his face, and his blackish hair. All together accompanied by the conch shell, wheel, club, lotus flower, bow, arrow, shield, and sword in his hands. These presented a grand and beautiful audience for Lord Vishnu, which captivated all the demigods there, including Daksha and Lord Brahma. So the Lord looked like an eight-petal lotus surrounded by fan and chamar and white umbrella and a crown and a beautiful face and earrings and Lakshmi Devi. So the glorification of the Lord is that he is Shamali, blackish in complexion, Hiranya Rasana, golden yellow garments, Arka Kirita Justa, that he has a crown as dazzling as the sun. Neelalak Brahmara, he has bluish hair like Brahmar, like black bees. Then Magdata Kundalashya, his face is decorated with earrings. And Sheikhabja Chakra Sara Chapagadasi, Charmra Vagir Hirmagya Bhujer. So he has 8 hands like the 8 petals of a lotus, holding the conch and the wheel and the club and the lotus and the arrow and the bow, shield and sword, which are decorated with golden ornaments that have the color of sunrise. Then Iva Karnikara, and he has a body that appears like a blue lotus flower. And Bhakshasya Adrita Vadur Vanamaya. His chest is decorated with the goddess of fortune and a Vanmalya. Vanmalya is a garland of forest flowers. Udar Hasabalo Kalaya Ramayali Chavivam, that he has a face decorated with a beautiful glance. So this is going from the physical description to the emotive description, that he has a beautiful glance and a smiling attitude. And Parshva Brahmad Vyajan Chamar Rajahamsa. So Rajhamsa is that just like a Rajhamsa, just like swans have beautiful beautiful wings on both sides, then Vyajan is the peacock fan and Chamar is the Chamar. So they are being waved on both the sides of the Lord, and they're looking like the wings of the swan. So beautiful picturization. And finally, the canopy is the Svetaptra Shashinopari. It's like the moon, the white canopy on the Lord. Okay, next verse. Tamupagatam alaksya sarvesurganadyaha pranemu saha sothaya brahmendra trayakshanayakaha. As soon as Lord Vishnu was visible, all the demigods, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, the Gandharvas and all present there, immediately offered their respectful obeisances by falling straight down by falling down straight before him. So in 4 verses, 22 to 25, we see that the Devas, they offer the respects and praise to the Lord as per the capacity. So previous 2 verses, it described the glory of the appearance of the Lord. This verse describes the reaction of the assembly in response to the appearance of the Lord. So a couple of points to note, that Maitreya is saying Brahma, Shiva and the Gandharvas. Now it's not that they were just Brahma, Shiva and Gandharvas, but Brahma and Shiva, they are the pinnacle of the Devas. Right? Brahma is, Lord Shiva is Mahadeva, Brahma is the Prajapati, and the Gandharvas are considered to be at the lower end of the Devas. So everybody, right from Lord Brahma to the Gandharvas, everybody, they are equally affected by the love for Lord Vishnu, and they immediately offer respectful obeisances, from the greatest to the not so great. And also important to note that even though there was prior divisiveness, everybody is now united in worshipping Vishnu. So previously, if you remember, the Devas had glorified Brahma when taking shelter of him, right? They'd gone to Brahma and saying, please help us because Shiva has destroyed our yajna, and they glorified Brahma, that you're the cause of the universe, etc. Then when Brahma had approached Lord Shiva, he had glorified Shiva as the absolute. Right? He had said, you're the proprietor of the universe, everything is born from you. Now we see that not only those who had glorified, the ones who were glorified are all united in offering their obeisances to Lord Vishnu. And Srila Prabhupada gives 3 quotes to show that Lord Vishnu is the supreme to everyone, to Lord Shiva, to Lord Brahma, and to all varieties of Devas. So Prabhupada says that it appears that Lord Vishnu is the supreme Lord, even of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, what to speak of the demigods, Gandharvas and ordinary living entities. It is stated in a prayer, Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha. All the demigods worship Lord Shiva. So this is spoken by Sutta Goswami in the 12th canto, 13th chapter, verse 1. Then Prabhupada says, similarly, Dhyana Vishtatadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogina. That yogis concentrate their minds on the form of Vishnu. This is actually at the second line of the same verse, 12:13:1. So thus Lord Vishnu is worshipable by all demigods, all Gandharvas, and even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Then Prabhupada gives a third quote, Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Prashanti Surya. This, as you know, is from the Rig Veda. So Prabhupada says Vishnu is therefore the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even though Lord Shiva was previously referred to in praise by Lord Brahma as the Supreme, when Lord Vishnu appeared, Shiva also felt prostrated before him to offer obeisances. Okay, we'll do one more verse and then we'll pause if there's any discussion. Tat tejasa hatruchaha sanjiva sasadvasaha murdanadratanjali puta upatasthu radhoksajam. In the presence of the glaring effulgence of the bodily luster of Narayan, everyone else's luster faded away and everyone stopped speaking. Fearful with awe and veneration, all present touched their hands to their heads and prepared to offer their prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Adhoksaja. So, Sanajiva means that with choked voices, choked with emotion. Now it's interesting to compare this situation with the situation of Krishna and Vrindavan. So when Krishna is in Vrindavan, he goes out on a picnic with the Gopas. Then the Gopas are all sitting around Krishna, they're joking with him, they're eating something and half-eaten food they're offering to Krishna. Here we see the Vaikuntha mood, that the presence of the Lord is evoking extreme awe and reverence. Right? That's the now here it says fearful with awe and veneration, and Sa Sadhavasa. In Vaikuntha there is no fear. This is because of the fact that this is the material world, but the awe and veneration is there, and that's the difference in the moods from Golok to Vaikuntha. Okay, so I'll pause here and see if we have any comments or discussion. If not, then we'll pause here and
Prabhu, you mentioned that Lord Vishnu was not happy but he appeared. But have not come across it yet, no?
It'll actually, this is a long chapter. It'll actually come across at the end of the chapter. Because what will follow now is prayers by the different personalities in the Yajna. And Prabhupada has extensive reports on the prayers. Then in response to the prayers, we will see the statements by Lord Vishnu. And generally when you pray to Lord Vishnu, he becomes very benevolent. He says, Shanti, 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 everything is okay. Here we will see a different mood that he chastises Daksha. Yeah. And she chastises, of course, in a subtle way, but you see the chastisement come through. Mm-hmm. And in a way, he also chastises the others because they all stood by when Daksha was offending Lord Shiva.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll end here. Vanchkalpatarubhayasya kripa sindhu vyayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Thai Gaur. So I've also sent out the Purva Svadhyaya, the questions for this unit to Prem Kishore Prabhu. So whenever Prem Kishore Prabhu is convenient for him, he'll send it out.
We shared it, Prabhu.
You shared it? Oh, thank you, Prabhu. Very efficient. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.